We'll take up synovial joints today. Synovial joint, as we know by definition, we have discussed it before also, are the cavitated joints, special kind of cavitated joints which have a synovial membrane within it. So if we take up synovial joint as a diarthrosis, that a joint which provide great deal of movement, let's discuss the components of the synovial joints first. Look for the joint structures. What are different structures within it? One of it is the articular cartilage. Right, there are two bones, and on the surface of the bone there is a special cartilage, hyaline cartilage, which is a articular cartilage. Then the joint cavity, it is being covered by a capsule, right, which is made up of fibrous tissue. We call it the fibrous capsule. Now within the joint cavity, what is there? That fibrous capsule, from inside it is lined by a membrane. Which is that membrane? Synovial membrane. And this synovial membrane, it secretes a fluid which fills the joint cavity, and that fluid is synovial fluid. These are main components of any kind of synovial joint. So when we take up a specific study of a synovial joint, so all are these special structures which we'll have to mention over there. Now let's take them one by one. Articular cartilage. This articular cartilage, it is made up of hyaline cartilage, and it is present over the part of the bones which are intracapsular within a synovial joint. That is, on the intracapsular part of the synovial joint, where those long bones which are present, and their surfaces are sliding against each other. You know, the bones, their intracapsular part is more than that. That the surface which slides with the other bone, and other part of the bone, though it is intracapsular, but it is not covered by the cartilage, right? Only the part which is cartilaginous in nature, having articular cartilage, only that part is in contact with the counter bone, right? The other part, which is non-articular part of the bone, that may be inside, it is covered by synovial membrane only. And this part, this surface, it is not covered by synovial membrane. It is devoid of it. The articular surfaces, they are devoid of it, and these surfaces usually are contiguous in nature, means when they have to slide against each other, one has to concave, the other one will be the convex, so that it can slide each other. There are various formation in different kind of bones. Say if we take an example of the shoulder joint, the concave surface, that is glenoid cavity, is very shallow, and the head of the humerus is very large. So there is a labrum, the glenoid labrum, all around a special kind of cartilage which deepens the cavity, right? So that surface become contiguous. You take the example of the hip bone. In the hip bone, the acetabular cavity is very large, right? And the head of the femur easily fits into it. Though of course the labrum is also present over there. Maybe it is partly providing the strength to that concave part. Now, these articular surfaces, obviously they are covered by the hyaline cartilage, and the thickness of the hyaline cartilage is such that if the surface is convex, this is the cartilage above it, so the cartilage will be thick in the center and very thin at the periphery. So if we show it with the diagram, if this is a head and this is a surface where articular cartilage is present, right? Then this will be thicker in the center and thinner at the periphery, right? If this surface is concave, then what will be there? It will be thicker at the periphery and will be thinner in the center. That is how the contiguous surface they fits into each other. We can assume that when they are articulating, the maximum forces are being exerted where the capsule is or where the cartilage is thick. We can assume that on the concave surface, the maximum forces are being exerted here, and on the convex surface, the maximum forces are being exerted here. So that's how the surfaces have been molded and their thickness has changed. Now, there are different kind of curvatures which are present on the articular cartilage. In simple, it looks as if this is a plane surface, and from theoretical purpose, it is very easy to assume that the surfaces are plane, because we always say that there is a fluid, synovial fluid, which act as a lubricant. Surfaces are plane, they slide against each other. So for sliding, this hypothesis that surfaces are plane fits very well. But actually, this surface is not plane as such. There are different kind of curvatures. 4 kind of curvatures. We call them as the primary, secondary, tertiary, and of course quaternary. These are present over the surface. First kind of curvature is this curvature which you have seen. The curvature is molded to the contours of the bone. The bone on which it is attached, accordingly the contour of the articular cartilage is present. This is the primary curvature, right? What is a secondary curvature? Actually, this curvature, as you see, this surface is actually not plane. This is slightly what we call as undulated. Undulated is a wave-like pattern, and this wave-like pattern, it is so minute, it is of the order of 10 raised to power minus 4 to 10 raised to power minus 5. This is the difference between the crest and the trough. Crest is the highest point, trough is the lowest point, right? So in between, the difference is of the order of micron meter. It is so small. The undulations are, this wave-like pattern which is present over is very small. Assumption is that within these troughs actually small amount of synovial fluid is present, and this cartilage actually is slightly elastic, right? When there is a greater pressure, on the joint, right? Compressional forces are acting, then this surface slightly yield like a sponge, right? So then within the trough, the synovial fluid is present that comes over to the surface, and that start actively participating in the lubrication also, right? So this is the assumption. The secondary curvatures are those undulated pattern which are present on the surface of cartilage. Third are the tertiary. Now if I enlarge one undulation, right, the tertiary one, they are like small hollows or the pits. They are small hollows, and the pit, they are of the order of 10 raised to power minus 5 to 10 raised to power minus 6 micrometers. They are even smaller than, of course, this is of this order, and this is again the order about 1/10 of that micron, smaller than that. So there are these pits which are present. Again, these pits, like this one has synovial fluid, this pit again is filled with synovial fluid. Means when the pressure is more, with the first pressure, this undulation will be slightly molded. If there is more pressure, the synovial fluid within the pits that also start participating in the lubrication process. And not only this, but these pits on the surface, under their surface, they have deep ridges. There are deep ridges which goes deep down of the surface of the cartilage. This is all cartilage, right? These ridges go deep down to it. So 4 kind of modifications have been seen. Primary, which are molded along with the bone. Secondary, which are undulation wave-like pattern on the surface. Tertiary, which are pits which are present in the undulation pattern. And the 4th one, quaternary, is that even with those pits, they can go down deep down, having ridges where the synovial fluid is present. So these are modifications or the curvatures which are present on the surface of the cartilage. Now, how this cartilage get its nourishment? We know that hyaline cartilage, they are not supplied by the blood vessels. So how they get the nourishment? While studying the cartilages, we discussed that they get the nourishment through the diffusion process from the surrounding tissue. So here, if this is a joint cavity, what we have, say this is a fibrous capsule within which it present. In the fibrous capsule, here is that membrane, synovial membrane, right? Within it is present what? Synovial fluid. So there are variety of methods by which it can get the nourishment. One kind of nourishment is that wherever, say this is hyaline cartilage and there is a junction between hyaline cartilage and the membrane, this synovial membrane, right? Say if I see the top view, this is the top view, right? This is the cartilage, or cartilage के चारों तरफ on the all sides of it is present the synovial membrane. It's not covering it. Of course, synovial membrane is present all around, right? So the junction of the synovial membrane and the cartilage, here a lot of blood vessels are present. They provide nourishment to the cartilage, right? Then the second kind, that synovial fluid is present. This synovial fluid is directly in touch with the cartilage. It can provide nourishment to it. Then third is, you see this bone surface, the bone has its own Haversian system, right? From where the nourishment is present. So through the bones, the inner areas of the cartilage, they are getting the nourishment. So there are 3 modes of nutrition. One, from the blood vessels which are present at the junction of the synovial membrane and the articular cartilage. Second one, from the bone on which it is attached. And the third one is directly from the synovial fluid, right? Now, we say that this is the free surface of the articular cartilage. Means no membrane is attached over it, right? For a small period of time, it was thought that on the surface there is a membrane of the articular cartilage of its own. That was named as lamina splendens. This is a layer which covers superficially, but now this view has been abandoned. Why? That though in those microanalysis it looked like to be a separate layer, but it seems just to be slight more thickening of the outer part of the articular cartilage. That chemical composition is slightly different. So in those micro pictures, they look like a separate layer, but actually it is not a separate layer. Though this layer can be slightly distinguished from the inner tissue, right? Then another important aspect, what are the changes which can take place in the articular cartilage? Normally, that once a tissue of the articular cartilage is destroyed, it is usually not renewed. But there are age-relating changes. Age-relating changes are that these undulations which are present on the surface, they become even deeper. They become even deeper, and lot of erosion take place on the surface. You know, due to continuous movement, continuous working, there has to be a necessary wear and tear. So that erosion take place, and there is an erosion material. There are specific materials which are present on the surface due to the erosion of the articular cartilage. So that finishes with the structure of the articular cartilage. So we discussed the various aspects of it, right? The second part is the fibrous capsule. Now, what is fibrous capsule? Say, I take another diagram. This is a bone. This is another bone on the other side, and a fibrous capsule is present. This is a section of that part. This is the fibrous capsule. So here is attachment of the fibrous capsule. Say this is all covered with the hyaline cartilage. So how the fibrous capsule is present? Like this. This is here the lining of the attachment of the fibrous capsule. So fibrous capsule, it is made up of course, that fibrous tissue primarily consisting of the collagen fibers, right? And of course, those collagen fibers are of type 1 and type 2 type, right? These are the one which are running longitudinally in one direction. These fibers are running from one bone to another bone, and they are not just parallel to each other. In fact, they are parallel to each other in a sense that they are running in the same direction, but how they are overlapping with each other. They are forming the mesh. So though of course they are running in the same direction, but due to this overlapping, this mesh-like network, it provides strength to the fibrous capsule. So you can say the longitudinally running fiber from one bone to other, but having those they are crossing each other, having cross striation of the fibers to provide strength to the fibrous capsule. Now this fibrous capsule is not always continuous. It's not always continuous. It is interrupted by the blood vessels maybe going inside, coming out, the nerves going inside or coming out. And you know about, say, if this is a shoulder joint, then on the inner side there is a supraglenoidal tubercle from where the long head of the biceps come down. This long head of biceps is a tendon, and it is intracapsular in nature. So it perforates through the fibrous capsule and come out. So you can say the tendons, there can be intracapsular ligaments which are present in the knee joint related to the semimembranosus muscle. The part of the muscle is related to the intracapsular ligament, right? So there can be ligament, there are tendons, there are nerves, there are blood vessels which can perforate through the fibrous capsule. And we know that fibrous capsule on the internal side is covered by the membrane, the synovial membrane. And so actually what happens, say if this is a synovial membrane, right, it is covered inside by the synovial membrane is blue in color, and outer side is a fibrous capsule. A tendon is coming from inside to outside. Fine. So when the tendon comes out, this synovial membrane, for some distance, it runs along with the tendon. It provides sheath to the tendon. It forms a tendinous sheath, right? So that this tendinous movement, when they are at this place, they are in coherence with the internal movement. They do not rub against each other, because this will have a synovial fluid and will have a frictionless motion. So this is an adaptation, so that the tendon can freely walk while it is present inside the cavity. But the disadvantage is that sometimes the extracapsular infection from here, it may enter through the sheath and may enter inside the joint cavity. But nevertheless, these are few structures which perforate through the fibrous capsule and enters inside. Now this fibrous capsule which is present, don't think it is made up of only the fibers, because the fibrous capsule itself, if you see, you have seen the knee joint, shoulder joint, it's not that strong that it can hold so much weight. So it is actually strengthened. It is strengthened by, say this bone is there, this bone is there, this is capsule, right? There are ligaments which are present on the outer side, which are adherent to the, it can be from here, it's just a diagrammatic representation, that on the outside of the capsule, the ligaments are running, like medial collateral, lateral collateral ligament here at the knee joint. All these are what? They are extrinsic ligaments, which are adherent to the capsule and providing strength to it, so that the fibers are not torn. So in this way, there are lot of thickenings. These can be intrinsic ligaments on the inner side, or these can be extrinsic ligament, that is the ligament which are present on the outer side of the capsule. There can be ligaments which are not attached to the capsule, but they are present on the outer side. They are nevertheless running from one bone to the other, but they are not attached to the capsule. So these ligaments are termed as the accessory ligament. They are not part of the capsule. If it is a ligament is attached to the capsule, whether on outer side, extrinsic, or on the inner side, intrinsic, then it will be the ligament of the capsule, intrinsic ligament of the capsule. If it is not attached to it, but nevertheless when it is present, it will strengthen the joint. So those are termed as the accessory ligaments, and usually the joints, knee being a very large joint, has so many ligaments around it. So most of them are accessory ligament, which are not directly related to the fibrous capsule. Then further joint further is strengthened by the presence of the muscles all around it. Here flexor group of muscle, extensor group of muscles together, they are also holding the joints. So you remember, if there is a twisted foot, say we take the example at the ankle joint, what happens? That the joint gets stretched, ligaments they get stretched, and in response to that, the muscles which are present around the ankle, they also undergo spasm, right? So the spasm of the muscle is basically a defense mechanism to further stretching of the ligaments. So at a stage when the ligaments they go beyond their limit, the muscles actually quickly undergo spasm. So the muscles which are present around the joint, they also form the mechanism which support the joint. So there are so many mechanisms around it, that the fibrous itself has got thickenings, right? It has got intrinsic and extrinsic ligaments, it has got accessory ligaments, it has got the muscles. But the main fibrous capsule is made up of fibers which are cross striations and running parallel to each other, as I told you the pattern, and they are made up of collagen type 1 and type 2 kind of fibers. So this is the fibrous capsule. The third part is the synovial membrane. There is a synovial membrane. So synovial membrane, as we just discussed in this particular part of the lecture, that it covers the entire internal surface of the joint cavity except the articular cartilages, which are made up of hyaline cartilage. Except that, of course, it is continuous on the periphery of the hyaline cartilage where it is attached on the bone, but it covers the whole inside of the joint cavity. It lines completely the fibrous capsule which is forming the joint cavity. This is the synovial membrane, and this synovial membrane has been derived, like we discussed, from the embryonic mesenchyme. So say, just giving an example, say that the bone is being formed. This is mesenchymal formation. This is a mesenchymal formation. This is all mesenchyme. This part got ossified. This part got ossified. Right? In between is the middle part, which still got the mesenchymal cells. These mesenchymal cells, when they are present at the periphery, they arrange themselves at the periphery, and there they form the synovial membrane. And within that becomes a cavity which is filled with the synovial fluid. So just at the time of the birth, when the mesenchyme is forming the bones or the joints, whether it is a fibrous joint or whether it is a endochondral kind of ossification or whether it's a intramembranous kind. Intramembranous kind is directly from the mesenchymal cell. In the endochondral, first the mesenchyme convert into cartilage, then they get ossified. This is the only difference. But the basic thing is, initially all of them, they are formed of mesenchymal cells. Like I discussed there, mesenchymal cell. They form the bone, whether through the cartilage or directly. But the part within the two remains mesenchymal. The cells, they arrange themselves to the periphery, and of course that part which is made up of the actually periosteum of this bone, it is continuous all around. It becomes hollow from within it. It becomes lined by those mesenchymal cells, and this way it forms a synovial membrane. So origin is from the embryonic mesenchymal cells. That's how it is originated. And what is the extent of it? It is extended throughout the joint cavity except articular cartilage, which is made up of hyaline cartilage. Now, if we take up the structure of this synovial membrane, it has got few cells over its surface. There are two kinds of cell. We call them type A cell and type B cell. Type A cells, they show some kind of villi, or we can call as the pseudopodia kind of structure. We call them as the lamellopodia. If I take a larger structure of the cell, if this is a cell, on the inner side, what it has got? It has got the pseudopodial structure, right? So it looks like villi. So on the gross picture, it will look like as if the membrane has got villi inside it. But those are not villi, but those are the lamellopodia of the type A cells of the synovial membrane. These type A cells, they secrete a fluid. Those are hyaluronates. Remember, this is the same that GAC, hyaluronic acid, which is seen inside the cartilage, right? So it's the same. So it is secreted by these cells. There are a lot of vesicles which are present inside it, and they secrete it in the synovial fluid, right? Other cells which are type B cells, they are fibrous in nature. Their structure internal, they are like fibroblast kind of structure, and they form fibers. So these two important kind of cells are seen over, and then over the surface, what is seen? There's the deposition of fats here and there. Those structures which are depositing the fats over there, they are termed as the fat pads. The articular fat pads, they are termed as. I give you the example. Say, I draw a separate diagram here. This is a bone, this is another bone below it, and this is fibrous capsule, right? And inside, it is being lined by the synovial membrane, right? Say there is a reinforcement in the form of those menisci, which is present over here, right? So the synovial membrane will be like this over there, right? So this is all a potential kind of space. It's a very thin space inside the synovial membrane. But say sometime most of the articulation, actually I should not draw it here, because the articular cartilage, I rub it over here in the small area, that this is the area which will actually having the articular cartilage. So the most of the movement is here where the articular cartilage is present. The membrane is on the side. The membrane as such has no part to play in the movement. The indirect part is that because it is secreting synovial fluid which is collecting there, and that is helping in the frictionless movement. right? The coefficient of friction is highly decreased by that fluid. So the membrane in the lower parts here, when the joints have to stretch, they have to compress, so there need to be some flexibility in the membrane. So when they are fully compressed, the membrane, they form folds and small cavities. Those are used when the joint will be stretched, then this membrane will stretch to accommodate it. So these areas, which are relatively free area, here the deposition of articular fat pads take place. So there is a basic phenomena that when there is nothing, then there is a fat. And a fat almost kind of invades every place inside the body when where there is nothing. So the articular fat pads are seen there, and this membrane of the synovial membrane, it can be divided into two parts: the layer above it having type A, type B cell, and the subintimal part is called as intima. The superficial cellular part is called as intima, and the part below it is the subintimal lamina. These are two parts of the synovial membrane, and subintimal lamina, it consists of those different kind of structures which are present in the articular cartilage, right? It has got those gags, hyaluronate. It has been seen that those are present in those area. Okay, so type A, type B cell, I just told you about it. Type B are like fibroblasts, type A like macrophages. Having said this is a type A cell, it will have those lamellopodia over it. They act like, they are like in structure, more like macrophages. The mixed kind of cells can also be seen, which are partially like, they may be having very small number of lamellopodia. They look more like the fibroblasts. So those mixed kind of cells, they are considered to be precursor cells, because you know in every kind of epithelia few cells are here and there placed precursor cells, because as one particular cells they worn out, then they are replaced by the new cells. Those are the precursor cells. So those which look in between, they are mixed kind, look in between, they are basically precursor cells. They can convert themselves when required into this macrophage kind of cell, type A, or a fibroblast kind of cell, the type B, right? These three kind of cells are seen. Now, what are the functions of the synovial membrane? Synovial membrane got two important functions. Number one, synovial fluid. It produces synovial fluid. As I told you, hyaluronate is one of the important ingredient of the synovial fluid. Hyaluronate. Along with, there is lubricant, there are mucin, there are different kind of structures which are present in it. And then another important part of the membrane is removal of debris. This is a more important part. Say this is a synovial membrane, right? This is a synovial membrane, and as the wear and tear is taking place due to the movement of the articular cartilage, that fluid, here the movement is taking place, and the fluid will, those debris which will be formed as a wear and tear, where they will collect, where there is least movement, right? So in this pocket somewhere these debris collect, and these debris, they are absorbed in the synovial membrane, and they are pushed deep down in the subintimal layer, and from subintimal layer, what is below that? Fibrous capsule, which is connected with the periosteum of the bone. So in this way, those debris, they are known to be they drained from that area. So it's not that those wear and tear particles, they cannot be drained. Synovial membrane is capable of draining that. So if the synovial membrane become dry, two things will happen. One thing, synovial fluid production will be impeded. The other one is the removal of debris will also become possible. At the same time, more debris will be formed, because membrane is dry, less synovial fluid, more friction means more debris. So it's a vicious circle, that if it get dry, on one side the debris will not be drained, and the other side more debris will be formed. Fine. So this is the synovial membrane. Then is synovial fluid. I'll say about it only one thing, that mainly it has got those hyaluronates. Along with it, there are some N-acetyl glucosamines are present, glucuronic acids are present, right? So these are all those different kind of the proteoglycans. They come in the same class. Those were sulfated proteoglycans, keratin sulfate, chondroitin sulfate. They were proteoglycans, but sulfated. These are non-sulfated, N-acetyl glucosamine, the glucuronic acid. Even the hyaluronic acid is a non-sulfated proteoglycan. So these non-proteoglycans, they are present in the synovial fluid, right? So these are 4 important components of a synovial joint. Just quickly, articular cartilage, having various kind of modification in the surface, fibrous capsule primarily for the strength of the joint, and synovial membrane for the nourishment of the joint cavity, and synovial fluid, of course. This is through which the synovial membrane nourishes the joint cavity. So this is about the synovial joint.